Marvel Rivals midseason $500,000 tournament is coming up. My name's Dogman. We're going to be going over each team, the individual team specifically, talking about maybe their chances at winning the whole thing and also just their players overall. So I'm more focused, more locked in on the North American region. So if you feel like you know more stories and stuff like that about specific players, please leave them in the comment below, because that is the most exciting part and the most fun part about these international tournaments is that we get to see many different teams play against each other. We get to see China versus North America. We get to see Korea finally compete in this game, or continue to compete, rather. And then also same thing with the EMEA dominance that has been happening over the past year, despite what America Man might say. They've been dominating every single LAN. Top four teams have been North American and EMEA combined in the international tournaments in the past few. However, that might change. And a lot of things are kind of in the works, and that's what we're going to find out at this $500,000 LAN at the midseason, is who the best team in the world is, and is it still an EMEA team? But we got to start up all the way down at the play-ins currently, because the play-ins will take place on July 29th with 4 teams from across the world, basically the last seeded teams that have come out of the Ignite Stage 1 matches in the playoffs. So we have Aconix, we have Reject, we have Rad, and 100 Thieves. We're going to go over Aconix first. They come out of the Chinese region. They have Karisu, they have Kenby Snake, they have Kami, they have Hetlaw, Eggtart, and Ghost. We've seen a few of these guys in the previous lands at the mid-season last year. For Aconix, we've seen Ghost have a pop-off series. Same thing with Eggtart. Hetlaw looked really good. Kami did as well back then. Things have changed. A lot of it depends on the current meta, which is changing like crazy because of the fact that we have the new team-up changes. So we have team-ups and we have enhanced team-ups now with the last patch, and that really changes a lot. I think currently we're entering a bit of more of a hit scan / Vanguard meta almost, it feels like. There's a lot of really good strategists still. That's going to be a mainstay throughout, is, you know, a lot of what your strategist can play kind of limits you or enables you for some squads. But I feel like with the enhancements to Magneto, with him getting the Scarlet Witch team up back again just by default, due to how the team ups work, where you don't even need Scarlet Witch to use the Magneto sword now, is fucking crazy, because that shit is broken. That shit's crazy. I wonder if the ban phase is going to impact that. There's so many first bans that you kind of have to do now because of that. It just feels like every single slot has a best-in-slot hero that can compete with each other. Like Magneto does insane damage. Mantis is just broken as well. It does insane damage on top of having good healing now. Same thing with Gambit. And then the duelist line. You have Black Widow. You have Elsa. You have Black Cat can be good in certain dive comps. However, it does feel like Hitscan is kind of taken over a bit. Regardless, this team is going to be very, very interesting, and I kind of wanted to pick a team to make out of the play-ins that's not going to be the typical, Rad, 100 Thieves. Like, I kind of need to do something a bit silly, a bit funny, due to the fact that I feel like something always kind of happens in these play-in stages. At least we've been close to teams make out of the play-ins last time. The only reason why, for example, I'm going with Aconix to make it out alongside 100 Thieves this time around, which I probably should choose Rad, but that's a different story, is because they were the only team at the midseason last year that looked competitive in the play-in stage. It was a very, very small and play-in stage. I believe it was also BO3 last year, and it's going to be BO3 this year. So it's going to be very fast, very quick. They're going to have to adjust at a very, very high level. If they don't, obviously they'll be out like they were in the other midseason. But honestly, like, I felt like Aconix could have made it out of the midseason last year if they had a BO5 to work with. But it's a pretty big risk still. I think most people have 100 Thieves and Rad making it out of the play-in stage. I just wanted to be a bit silly with it, maybe, and figure out maybe they would make it out, because we've seen. I mean, I know this is not the past, but Ghost was a competitor in Overwatch back in the day under a different name. A lot of the guys that you'll notice that are in the Korean and Chinese scene have been around, in the Overwatch scene. This is a completely different game, though, guys. I know there's that current debate, with main tanks versus off tanks or whatever, and, Overwatch terms being used in this game. You might even have Paladins guys using their terms. But realistically, Marvel Rivals is its own very, very unique game, and I think that's the difficulty for a lot of these international talent, is that, there's so much to pick up on in this game in terms of the back and forth. The neutral is very different. There's so many different things, like, in terms of that department. But this Aconix team, I think they can overcome those, stipulations in their play-in stage. The reason why they're in the play-in stage is because they lost to OUG in the grand finals in the Chinese region in 4-0 fashion. Now, they did beat them in the upper bracket finals versus OUG in 3-1 fashion. However, OUG was the better team and has been the better team in organization over the past 2 years, basically. OUG, however, has not looked that good at LAN, but we'll talk about that later specifically, I guess, when we talk about OUG. But Aconics, I have a little bit of faith in them. However, it is a steep hill to climb in the group stages. Back in the Chinese region, they did go 6-1, losing to OUG in 0-2 fashion. Had a 12-2 record with a +10 map differential coming out of the Chinese region. So they, again, number 2 seed coming out of China. I know that a lot of people say that maybe this is like a bit of a Mickey Mouse region due to the fact that they are, not that highly rated on ladder compared to other regions. But at the end of the day, I don't think that matters as long as you have good coordination and can figure it out at the highest level. And I think that they do have a lot of players that can do it. So you know what? I think every team at this playing stage could make it out, basically. I think people are, closing the door on some teams a little bit too early. And that other team that we'll talk about, that maybe people have over both Rad and 100 Thieves in different brackets, is Team Reject. That's the team with Brownie, with Yaki, if you remember him from Overwatch. Same thing with Piggy, same thing with Gargoyle, Seung Hoon, and Lastro, if you remember him from Overwatch as well. So these guys have been around the block. However, with the Korean scene in general over the past 2 years, they've not shown much. That's the difficulty for them, is that the Pacific region and specifically the Asia region has not been as strong as I think people assumed they would be in a hero shooter due to the fact, that they've dominated the hero shooter genre forever. I mean, I remember getting my ass kicked by a lot of these guys for years, basically, due to the fact that, Korean talent was more developed and overall more mechanically skilled, it felt like, and there was a lot more belief in them. This scene, not so much. I think that the EMEA region and North American region have dominated. Maybe this is their chance to turn it around. Maybe Reject and them can finally figure it out. But the tough part for them is that they did lose back in the Asia region. Back, we have a new sort of combined region between Pacific and the Asia region. They had to go through their own multi-tournament setup, basically, just to qualify for their own Stage 1 playoffs, where we saw Gen G beat Reject 3-1 fashion in the upper bracket finals and then beat them 4-1 in the grand finals to send Reject down into that second seed slot, which put them into the play-ins. And Reject did dominate the Korean scene, did the Asia scene in general, and they have very, very good players. So I would kind of want to lean that way for a lot of people that are going towards Reject. I think this is probably the real dark horse team if I'm taking myself out of it. I do think that this Reject squad can compete at the highest level. It's just tough because Gen G was a very, very good lineup and actually have a good chance, I think, in the playoffs due to the fact that it's combining, again, some of the best players from China and Australia. So Reject have a good chance to make it out of this group play-in stage. We'll have to wait and see if they have the same problems they did last year. I know there was allegations of partying before matches and people being jet lagged and stuff. I'm curious how serious Team Reject is taking it this time around. They have, again, J-Max is their coach for Team Reject. And you know what? I think they could do it. I think they can make it out of this playing stage depending on a few things and if, Yaki has lived up to expectations for this game. But the two teams I think that are favored for this playing stage is Team Rad and Team 100 Thieves. We'll talk about Rad first. Rad has Crazy Kitty, Smash Nez, Ducky, Lugia, Goat, and Mash and Vertigo. Now, this Rad team actually got an upset, I believe, back in the EMEA playoffs. So they actually 3-1 Team Heretics in the playoffs, who were 5-0 in their group stages. So Team Heretics dominated Group B, basically. However, it turned out Group B was the kind of easier group at the time. Now, obviously, we could talk about Crownfall in Stage 2. They look pretty good when I watch back their games. And same thing with Chosen Ones. I think a lot of teams are... This EMEA region is very deep. However, Heretics ended up losing to Rad in those playoffs. So that means every team in Group A made it out. Rad did go 3-2 back in the group stages to go 6-5 total with only a +1 map differential. It's the worst, I believe, out of these teams that made it through the group stages in their group. But Group A was very, very good in hindsight. You had to look back at Pulsar. It was a group of death, basically, in the EMEA region. And, I don't know, man. Team Rad, I think, has a good chance to make it out and also have a very good team. It's tough for Team Heretics. The fact that they beat Team Heretics is kind of a big deal. Now, obviously, they did end up losing in the playoffs to VP in 3-0 fashion. However, a lot of teams would do that, right? VP is a really good team, except to get beaten by Na'Vi, who are kind of on another level, and we'll talk about them later. And I still have my flight to catch, so I have to kind of run through this, guys. Sorry if I didn't do Rad justice, but I do think Rad are a favorite to make out of the groups for most people. Like I said, I'm just trying to be a special snowflake going for Iconics here. 100 Thieves. Delena, Self, Vinny, TTK, Millennia, and Winnie. I'm a bit more well-versed, I think, in this lineup specifically. But for 100 Thieves, it was a very, very interesting playoffs, and they just keep doing it, guys. Like, let's be honest, it's just weird. At this rate, it's just kind of like 100 Thieves will be at LAN every single time, even if you doubt them. It did feel like maybe FlyQuest would be a stronger slot in, maybe even Team Yaoi Lost. But Yaoi Lost got smoked by 100 Thieves 3-0 fashion, sending them out of the playoffs. 100 Thieves had a close game in the playoffs versus FlyQuest in 3-2 fashion. But 100 Thieves, same thing as Rad, actually, except for the fact that Sentinels didn't make it. They had a 3-2. Yeah, sorry, Sentinels actually was a favorite in this playoffs, and then they just fucking bombed out like crazy, which was insane. And then they had their own crash out via Twitter and stuff with Oasis. That was insane between Crimzo and Oasis and this whole roster and Korova. Weird shit going on over there. Kind of roster imploded in the group stages, or sorry, in the playoffs, and resulting in 100 Thieves making the playoffs again. So realistically, I can never doubt 100 Thieves. They seem to always make top 4 at these lands too and do well. Even if they're not going to win the whole thing, they're always a surefire team to do solid, and that's kind of why I don't want to have them bombing out of the playoffs on my end, why I believe they wouldn't, because there's a reputation there that they've been consistent. So I'm kind of going based off of recent history at every land so far, which is 100 Thieves makes it decently far in these tournaments, whether due to because of matchups, because of seeding. Sometimes they get lucky in that department. But regardless, they just seem to always do well. I would be surprised if they don't. Now, I think this has been the weakest iteration of 100 Thieves so far is the tough part, right? When we talk about 100 Thieves in the past, obviously they had Terra. That was a big deal. This meta, I think, actually does favor them a little bit. I know that some of the dive characters can be good. I know Venom's very good. I'm curious if they do any first bans on teams that have very good Venom players. I know a lot of teams aren't willing to waste first bans on Venom. However, this roster specifically doesn't really have a good Venom player. I think Vinny's been grinding and stuff. And I know that people have been wanting to split up this Vinny TTK tandem for quite some time. But if we're entering a mag meta and stuff, like, I actually think this team might be solid. And, it depends on how Groot stuff goes. I know Angela can be good, so maybe TTK can be back on his Angela and Vinny back on the mag. But that's the tough part, is that every character that Vinny's good on, I kind of want to also see TTK on. So they have a weird dynamic there, for sure. So 100 Thieves, I don't know if they'll make it out of the play-in stage. But for me, my actual predictions, I had 100 Thieves and Iconics making it out of the play-in stage over Rad and Reject. That's stupid. I know a lot of people will say that. But I figured Iconics can do it this time around. Surely, guys, surely. Probably not, but whatever. I'll make my official predictions, and you guys can call me an idiot. All good with that. Let's go into the playoff stage, though, guys. We'll talk about the teams that are past the play-ins so far. OUG, we'll talk about, again, the Chinese region. They went 7-0 in their group stages. They dominated the group stage, went into the playoffs. They did get upset by Iconics in the upper bracket final, but then dominated through their lower bracket run, beating SLZZ and Iconics. The Chinese region all plays each other like kind of weirdly. Like FL Esports could have been a solid team, but, lost 3-0 to SLZZ or Sliz or whatever you want to call them in the lower brackets. Like I said, don't know as much about the Chinese region. However, based on what we've seen at them at LAN, we've seen this OUG roster in the past. They have Taro Cookie, they have Illicit, the Korean player. The rest of them are Chinese in the roster with Yexin, with Wen Juyan, with Zhao Zhang, and Svald. What we do remember from OUG at the midseason last year and the grand finals is that Zhao Zhang was a fucking crackhead. That guy was insane on Loki and those type of heroes. So I would not be surprised if he's still very good at those heroes. Might be one of the best Lokis in the tournament, but at the end of the day, it's a team game, and it doesn't really matter if you have a star player on the Shredditus line if you can't fucking rally around them. So let's see how Team OUG does in the playoffs. I would be curious if they do well. Taro Cookie's always been cracked on like Star-Lord and that kind of stuff. But maybe, just maybe, the Chinese rosters will do well this time around, although there's some other teams that we'll talk about later, like Gen G, that might have even better talent there, potentially. So, yeah, I'd be curious to see how they do well. I think, like I mentioned in the play-in stage, this is a patch that is going to be very, very interesting to watch out for. I'm leaning like it'll go more towards, I think that the hit-scan duelists are very strong right now, and, I think Elsa's incredibly strong. I think Black Widow's very strong right now after the rework. Phoenix not so much, but Hela can be good. Hela's actually a pretty solid shout in general, and I feel like because of that, a lot of these slower, more pokey teams could benefit from it. However, coordination and dives are still very good, like we mentioned with Venom and those type of heroes and Cap. Like, you still need a lot of these space creators as well as the ones that are very, very high damage dealing like Venom. But like I mentioned, the duelist roles aren't synergizing, I think, in that department. Like, we have Psylocke, and Psylocke is very good, but it does feel like the kind of counter dive heroes like Elsa with her buffs and with Black Widow being so good, and the fact that she has CC, it does feel like the duelist department is more like counter dive, which you can also play Black Widow on flank angles and stuff, so I'm curious how the Black Widow players are taking it up, but there's not a lot of time to adjust and figure things out. That's why the Marvel Rivals esports scene is so fucking interesting to watch, is because things are changing all over the place, which makes things very, very hectic for the pros and stressful, but also changes the entire, favorites to win the tournament on its head. Like, you can have one patch that puts a player in S tier and they can fucking carry your ass, and I know I just kind of disputed that in the last talk about OUG. However, we have to also remember that all these players are, very, very good. They're all playing professional level Marvel Rivals, which is in itself very impressive, even if they're not some of the best in their role. If you have one guy that gets a really good patch and he's just a god on a certain hero and he's not getting banned out, or other characters are more prioritized in the ban phase, then you get a very, very unique character. Like, I just to call back to my own experience, I had a player like that. Was Goats meta swapped off in Overwatch back in stage 3. We were pretty mid at it in general. We had Genji meta come back through. We had a player named Erster who was fucking god tier, and he just carried us for like 8 wins in a row in the group stages, in stage 4 rather of Overwatch League, to result in us getting a pretty good spot in the playoffs and not being out of it. So anything is possible, basically, is the point I'm trying to make. And another team that is very, very good that we'll go to next has a player like that with FMCL. I think he had a great time in the past under, what was the team name? It wasn't Big Chungus. That was FMCL's last name. God, I gotta fucking remember it. It was CM. Chopper Mag. Chopper Mag had a crazy playoffs under the midseason last year, and they're a very, very fun lineup to watch in general. They got, again, Bobo, Salvation. They have a very good backline with Skittles also still. I don't know if Skittles has swapped off control. I thought he did. Somebody might have to correct me. But they again, are going into a mag meta, which, honestly, if I'm talking about teams that may have upset potential and a real shot at doing good, especially with the fact that Wolverine is really good, looking back at the Gen G roster, I'm like, damn, maybe this team has a good shot to make it far in the playoffs. I mean, Duep was a really good Magneto player from what I remember last year, and we're entering a mag meta. We'll see if Mag gets banned out and stuff. I'm curious how that kind of goes. I know Skittles had a pretty good performance on Jeff at times as well. I don't know. I have kind of some faith in this Gen G roster. It kind of depends on how this backline does for me. But, if we have Wolverine do solid, if Bobo is still Bobathy, then I think this team will be good. That never doing that again. That was fucking terrible. Zen Story was also a very good group player back then. So, I mean, if we enter that meta once more, I might have some faith in Gen G, depending on what the duelist line looks like and the back line. But I have a lot of faith, I think, in this Vanguard line of Gen G. So we'll see how they do in the playoffs. I think in my actual bracket, I didn't have them going very far, but I probably should change that because I have a lot of faith in Gen G. I know you guys wanted graphics and stuff. People have been asking for that in the comment section. However, I'm trying to get this out before my flight in quite literally like half an hour. I got to go. So let's talk about the next rosters after that. I forgot to mention as well, Gen G did end up beating Reject 3-1 and then 4-1. We talked about that before in the grand final. So Gen G is a very good team. They also made it out of the Pacific, region pretty flawlessly. So they looked really, really good. Talking about the next rosters, though, let's go talk about Virtus Pro. Now, this team has been is the reigning champions back from the grand finals last year. It was cool to see them win the whole thing in a pretty strong fashion. Nobody was really on their level in terms of their tempo, in terms of the dive. They were on top of it. They looked really, really good. Now, like I mentioned, we're entering a bit of a slower meta, I think, maybe, depending on how things go with their Vanguard line. This team still has pretty good potential. I think that the playoffs, the big thing I want to mention is that the meta I think that we're going into is my prediction. This is obviously all yet to be seen, but we're entering back into a meta where I think VP might actually be favored. I feel like they might be solid in this meta, despite the fact that Na'Vi 4-0'd them in the upper bracket, or the grand finals, 3-0'd them in the upper bracket finals. And Na'Vi looked flawless throughout the group stages as well, except for losing one map in those group stages. So I think this team can be very good, this VP roster, especially into a meta where that a lot of the players can shine with Fi, with Sparker, with Finzi, with Nevix, Dridro, and Saipe. I don't know if I talked about the Gen G roster. Sorry, it's Bobo, FFCL, Senstarry, Dwep, Salvation, and Skittles. I'm trying to move fast, guys. Apologies. Don't have a lot of notes here. But I think this VP roster has a good shout. Obviously, I don't know if Human Torch is very good and stuff. Like, I know that we saw some Human Torch shit out of the Boger Bash with Necros. I wasn't a big fan of it. I don't know if it's going to be that good against a lot of the hit scan characters that are solid this patch. And especially people looking at him, if you have the gun characters and the gun characters are good, I'm not sure if Human Torch will be super meta. Now, it depends, obviously, on a bunch of different things, on the Torch players themselves and stuff. We'll see if VP even wants to run that shit. But if we have Psylocke still be good and the hit scan characters still be solid, I wouldn't be surprised if VP does good yet again at the midseason. And the fact that they're here is pretty awesome. I mean, they've made it multiple lands in a row. They obviously missed the midseason last year, which was insulting to them, I bet. And since then, they've been kind of on a tear. However, Na'Vi, the next team we'll talk about, looked crazy, guys. I mean, we can't underestimate that. Even if the patch is changing, we do have to look back at the fact that Na'Vi were, just like TLC in the North American region, really fucking good. I mean, they lost one map the entire tournament in stage 1, and that was back in the group stages. And I have to double check who that was to real fast. If looking back at it, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. They ended up losing a map to VP back in the group stages, and they lost on Central Park. And obviously some teams are very good on Domination and Convoy Convergence separately, and that was kind of, we'll talk about it later, Team Liquid Citadel's problem. Na'Vi has kind of had Convoy, I guess, problems maybe at best, but regardless, they still look really fucking dominant, and it's hard not to try to be convinced in their chances in the playoffs in the midseason, considering they've been good before. However, VP still ended up winning the grand finals last year, and I'm not going to say it was a similar patch. It was, like I said, mainly a lot of dive characters. I think a little bit less of the mag stuff, a little bit less of the Garut stuff or whatever, but it all depends kind of how Wolverine goes and stuff. Like, I'm curious if Wolverine's still going to be very good. Jerky, I think, has leveled up this past year. He's looked really fucking good. Rajaro is still insane. Trust me, still one of the best Vanguards in the game. Best Venoms, too. So Rajaro has been also insane at flexing and filling and doing all of the dirty work for this team, especially with the mag meta coming in. Might see a Rajaro resurgence. And Fate and Level Cook are fucking cracked. I thought they were the best backline in the entire tournament in the grand finals, despite how things kind of went. Saipe and Dridro were obviously very good last year, but for me, I don't know, man. Fate and Level and Cook are just really, really cracked, and I have a lot of faith in that back line. So, yeah. I think Na'Vi are probably going to win this playoffs this time around. I don't think it would be that ballsy to say VP, though, Like, maybe even Gen G. High key, if I wanted to go for like an upset so far, we'll talk about that later, might go for Gen G. I'm kind of doing the debate in my head as we move along because I'm trying to get things moving. It all depends, again, on the meta. I'm trying to make predictions for that department. Swamp Gaming. All right, we'll talk about Swamp Gaming now. This is their first land they're going to make it to over the past couple years. They've been competing as a cohesive unit. They've obviously had fill-ins with Forky Dog coming in and Valentina coming in and being really good. So they've only made kind of upgrades throughout the year. But it's Melophobia, Daze, Krasmag, Scatter Genji, Forky Dog, Valentina, and they have a matey on the bench alongside their coach, Fox. So, not really talking about coaches too much throughout. Sorry about that, but obviously got to mention that goofball coming in. I'm sure he's going to start a lot of drama on land. This Swamp Gaming team is weird. I'm going to be honest. This is the first land they're making, and well deserved. I think that Valentina put the fucking carry pants on Hell's Heaven. I'm trying to remember when that was. I think it was versus. I don't remember who it was against, but regardless, Valentina's a crazy Luna Snow player, crazy player in general. And then Forky Dog's also kind of in that boat. So I think this team is very, very good as well as trying to figure out that sort of duelist line has been their biggest problem. The biggest difficulty is how to slot in a Madian because they have 3 really good duelists. And it depends on the meta. Like, I think now that we're entering hit scan meta, if Wolverine falls out, now I'm curious if Daze is getting a lot of playtime. because I know Melo's had to fill a lot of roles, right? And I think he feels more comfortable playing with Daze because Daze has that solid flex role, whereas he could just play the hit scan stuff. But Melo, as good as he is on hit scan and flexing, it's always awkward to have to switch back and forth between Imadian and Daze. So I'm curious how Fox kind of runs that lineup, especially entering again hit scan meta a little bit. Black Cat's still very good. Same thing with Daredevil. And I think some of the pros will point this out on social media, on Twitter, is that every hero is kind of good right now. But, with these hit scan characters and with a lot of these sort of heroes being solid, the difficulty is for pros, I think, is that there is going to be a meta, and it's a matter of how fast do you figure this out. Like, you can only try stuff for so long, but if you lose scrims, week after week after week, it might be time to change something. And, if we're only scrimming for 2 weeks going into the playoffs, we got to figure out the meta fucking fast. So, I'm sure there's going to be something that's kind of decided upon towards the end. Some characters going to sneak it through ban phases, and it depends. It depends. Some coaches have better ban phases in certain metas as well. Kind of the same thing with players having better hero pools in certain patches. This is the team that, to be honest with you, I have probably the least faith in the playoffs, only because they don't have a ton of history here. They don't have a ton of history on LAN. Now, I love the players. I think they've been consistent throughout the years. They're a bit more of a newer team in this department in terms of making LAN. They're obviously not a new roster playing together as a unit. They're really good. So I don't want to undersell their talents. I just, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of other good strategist players in this tournament, and that's going to be the tough part. I think they've been not necessarily carried by strategists, but I think a lot of mistakes are saved by them for sure. On top of the fact that they still have to figure out, if Daze is playing. Because Daze, when he's playing, he's like Terra levels on Wolverine and that kind of stuff. But it's a matter of, do we get to see him? Is Imadian going to be playing more of the time or not? I'm sure that we'll see it soon, guys. I mean, quite literally in 4 days, basically, coming up in July 31st, which 30th, which is my almost my birthday. The 31st is my birthday. Liquid Citadel. Sorry for bouncing all over the place, guys. I got to fucking speed this shit up. Well, real quick, talk about the fact that, Swamp Gaming and Liquid Citadel, they played against each other the whole time. It was basically these two teams at the top. Same thing with Na'Vi and VP, basically, besides Heretics. Heretics actually were looking really good until they ended up not making the midseason. Kind of like VP last year, which is kind of interesting. But Swamp Gaming dominated everybody else, basically, guys. Like, let's be honest. It was the Liquid Citadel and Swamp Gaming throughout the whole tournament. 100 Thieves ended up taking a map off of them in the playoffs, but Swamp Gaming went 10-0 in the group stages to have a plus 10 map differential. In the playoffs, they lost a map to 100 Thieves, but after that, didn't do anything else. They lost another map to 100 Thieves in the lower bracket finals, and then to Swamp Gaming, they lost 3-0, and then 4-1 in the grand finals. So Liquid Citadel, same boat as Na'Vi, where they looked dominant throughout the playoffs. Besides losing a map, Na'Vi didn't lose a map in the playoffs, whereas Na'Vi lost their map in the group stages. Liquid Citadel did not. They went undefeated in the group stages and dominated basically everybody, and they looked like a better team than they ever have. So that's the worrisome part, I think, for the roster, is that Liquid Citadel do look very good, and I think that for North American fans in general, you could probably rest your hat on Liquid Citadel this time around being the best team that we've seen out of a North American lineup ever. The difficulty is, really, at the end of the day, they haven't shown up on LAN just yet. Now, they do have Vest in the roster. The fact that they picked up Poly 2 has been fucking crazy. They've just upgraded Vanguard lines. That's the main department that they've upgraded on. Same thing with Duelist, I guess, with Energy coming up. This is probably the best chance that North America has to win the LAN. And if they don't, honestly, I would be a little surprised. I still have Na'Vi. I had Na'Vi winning the LAN in my predictions. But this Liquid Citadel roster with Energy, with Speedily, with Pauly, with Vess, Nero, Cooper. By the way, can fucking Speedily change his name back to Speedily instead of being Speedery, dude? He's like making the casters say Speedery instead, and it's pissing me the fuck off. Gator, legit, get on this shit, dude. What are we doing? Arian Weaver, I know you're going to watch this shit, dude. Tell him to change his name back to Speedily. I talked to him in person. Speedily said, I'm not going to change it, dude. He has a way lower pitch voice than that. But change your name back to Speedily, dude, you fucking asshole. All right, that's about it, guys. I guess we can go over my predictions real quick. I opened the in-game lineup. I'm doing this on the fly, like I said, because I have to hurry the hell up. I would edit this part out, but I want to get this shit moving and shaking so I can make my flight and not be late to the biggest tournament of the year, $500,000 tournament. By the way, if you're going to be there, make sure to say hi. okay? I know a lot of people are nervous on land and stuff. If I see you even looking at me, okay? If I see you doing that socially awkward stare across the room, I will walk up to you and shake your hand. And if you say you don't know who I am and I awkwardly introduce myself, then that's going to be weird, but I don't really care because I am shameless and don't give a shit about anything in this life anymore in a positive way, okay? Positive spin on it, not a negative spin on it. Don't get it twisted. But where's my predictions? I'm trying to fucking fill for time while I go to my predictions. I get lost in the tab like a fucking unk all the goddamn time. This is super embarrassing now that I am lost in this, but I'm trying to talk at the same time. Matchups. Nope. What the fuck am I doing right now? It's in the esports tab. I remember that. Events? No. Wait, hold on. I'm not lost. I should edit this part out, but I'm going to find it. Where the hell is my predictions? Predictions ongoing. There it is, boys. I was here already, and I fucking backed out like a dumbass because I'm talking. Okay, listen, people will call me stupid for that shit, but believe you me, it's hard to talk at the same time as reading, okay? Not my forte. Anyways, these are my predictions. They're pretty bad. I get it. Okay, listen. Wait, hold on. What the fuck did I do? I said I have Aconics making out groups, and I don't? Oh, it's because I see on the official social medias it said that Aconics is making out group stages. That's why I was convinced. Yeah, I didn't have Aconics making it out. Don't look at social media when I made Aconics making it out. The more I thought about it, probably not. I did have them beating Reject because I'm kind of a China believer. I probably shouldn't, but yeah, these are my predictions. Okay, I'm gonna change them right now, though. Okay, I'm changing them again because the more I think about the meta, the more I want to believe in Gen G. Okay, the more I want to believe in Gen G and VP. So let's change things. Okay, I think Rad do make it out. And in fact, no, this is actually not a bad patch for 100 Thieves. I think Rad and 100 Thieves probably make it out of the play on stage. I can't really fool myself there. Listen, I got to get my points in game, all right? I can make all these dumb predictions online I want, but I got to get my in-game fucking unstable goddamn molecules, man, all right? Let me cook. Na'Vi versus 100 Thieves. I had 100 Thieves winning in the playoffs. Yeah, that ain't happening. I think I have VP beating Gen G. I wanted to make like a first stage sort of upset here. I think the only upset might be Gen G over VP, but this is also a good patch for VP. That's the tough part. I think this is actually going to be the matchup to watch. I could be wrong, but based on the patch, based on the meta, I think this is the match to watch. I think Rad, they might have been, a bit of a fluky last sort of meta type characters. Now, I hope they do well, and I think they can do well. So we'll see. But there, again, not a lot of things to go off of. Same thing with Swamp Gaming. Now, that's the weird part, is that OUG might actually beat Swamp, depending on how the actual substitutions go and shit. But maybe you put OUG beating Swamp Gaming here, dog. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to get a lot of shit from Fox for this shit. And America, man. But high key, wait, I got to believe in one Chinese team here. All right, let me cook. But they're going to lose to TLC in the next stage. I think VP, based on the meta, might beat Na'Vi. I know that the playoffs or the group stages was very lopsided for Na'Vi throughout the whole thing. But I don't know. This patch just feels like very VP coded. It feels very VP coded. I could be wrong about that, guys. I could be wrong about that, especially with Na'Vi's Vanguard line being really good. I just think they like to do more dive shit. And same thing with VP, though. Fuck. This is probably a bad play. But I'm going to go with VP. I'm going to believe in the playoffs. This is not going to... Listen, we got to fucking wipe everything from memory, guys. It's a brand new patch, okay? I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, but also bear in mind that every fucking time the midseason and the grand finals happen, we have like a crazy meta shift, and nobody expects some teams to do well, all right? So I'm not that crazy. I'm going to get flamed in the comment section and whatever, but still, I'm going to go with fucking VP beating Na'Vi, TLC beating OUG. I'm going to have Gen G beating 100 Thieves. That's a bit insane. But that's only because 100 Thieves seem like they're not getting lucky this time in terms of matchups. Now, 100 Thieves could beat Na'Vi in the playoffs. I think that's their one hope at doing well because, to me, Gen G is a very good team. But I have, like I said, my upsets, I kind of want to put VP and Gen G in the finals. That's like insane. It's very insane, and I might have not thought this through. But, Heike? Let's do that. So I have Swamp Gaming probably bombing out of the tournament, guys. I don't know, man. Maybe this is probably really disrespectful. Their players are gonna hate me. I like their team, and I think they can be good. All right, listen. But I gotta make ballsy plays in the playoffs here. You can shit on me when you win. All right? But I want my fucking molecules. I'm sorry for cussing so much. Okay, Gen G beating OUG here, in my opinion. Navi probably beating Rad again. Or Rad maybe wins, dude. Maybe Rad goes for the crazy upsets. Rad's in a similar position to Swamp Gaming there. They have a lot to prove. But I think EMEA as a region has shown that they can... Fuck. No, I have Swamp Gaming winning here. Who am I kidding? Yo, wait. Do I have Swamp Gaming beating Navi? No. I should, though. Because it's always, every single stage, it's been top 4 teams have been EMEA, have been North America. Okay? So, I'm really going against the grain here. I mean, just based off, this is not basing off history now. Now I'm just going off vibe checks, dude. Vibe check. And my vibes say Gen G fucking beat Navi, dude. All right? Listen, why not? Why not? We're doing it, we're doing it live. Okay, we got VP beating TLC. And then I got, no. I have TLC beating, no. I got VP beating fucking, these top 3 teams, based on the meta, I think that this is the top 3 teams. And it could be a coin flip from here. I think TLC maybe lose this. High key. Fuck it. Do we ball? Do I get called the dumbass for thinking this Gen G lineup has what it takes to win the whole tournament? Yes. Do I care? No. End the video. See you guys at fucking LAN.